The Doklam Plateau. To most of us, the term is a reminder of the India-China standoff which took place in 2017. Most of what we remember is about how India managed to get the Chinese to step back. But did China really step back? Has India been keeping an eye on the disputed plateau? Is India's crucial Siliguri corridor still in danger? And are we heading to a new crisis in Doklam? In this video, we'll try to answer some of these questions. The roots of the Doklam dispute are in the Anglo-Chinese Convention of 1890, signed between the Qing Empire and the British Raj, aiming to settle the border between Sikkim and Tibet. Bhutan, however, wasn't even consulted on the issue of where its border lay. The agreement between Britain and the Qing stated that the boundary of Sikkim and Tibet shall be the crest of the mountain range, separating the waters flowing into the Sikkim Teesta and its affluents from the waters flowing into the Tibetan Mochu and northwards into other rivers of Tibet. The line commences at Mount Jipmochi on the Bhutan frontier. The key question in the border dispute is whether to follow the letter of the treaty or to follow the watershed principle. Modern cartographic measurements have revealed that the actual crest of the mountain range is Merugla, with a height of 15,266 feet compared to Gaimochen or Jipmochi at 14,518 feet. This is the Indian interpretation of the border, which adheres to the watershed principle. And this is the Chinese interpretation of the border, which adheres to the letter of the treaty. Irrespective of what the interpretation of the treaty is, China does not have a legal right to construct or deploy troops and material on what is clearly disputed territory. This brings up the question, why is China so interested in Doklam? India's Siliguri corridor is vulnerable to a Chinese threat. While the question of whether China can actually overcome India's forces in Sikkim, outflank them, or mount an air assault may be conjectural, infrastructure in the so-called Chicken's Neck, connecting West Bengal to the rest of India's northeast, is liable to be cut off by China. Now, what actually happened during the 2017 Doklam standoff? On the 16th of June 2017, Chinese troops attempted to construct a permanent road in this disputed territory and moved in heavy equipment. On the 18th, Indian forces moved in to bring a physical halt to the construction. This sparked off a tense standoff between the two Asian powers, high in the Himalayas. After a few weeks of increasingly aggressive rhetoric, former Foreign Secretary and now Minister for External Affairs Subramaniam Jaishankar suddenly claimed that de-escalation had begun. He testified that 13 rounds of back-channel talks had been conducted while Indian forces at the face-off site remained at their positions. China, on the other hand, maintained that its troops had always been on Chinese territory, that India had committed an incursion, and that it would continue to remain in Doklam. Chinese border troops continue with their patrols and stationing in what they call the Donglang area. Since August 28, 2017, the term de-escalation seems only to apply to India's deployments and statements made by Indian officials. At Doklam, China temporarily halted further construction towards Dokala, yet construction a few hundred meters to the rear and a few kilometers to the east, directed towards the Torsa Nala, seems to have sped up and tended towards permanent deployments. A detailed expose was published in the print in 2018 by former Indian military intelligence officer Colonel Vinayak Bhatt as well as by us in that year. Our analyses revealed that China's constructions were not just limited to roads. On the contrary, concrete structures, trenches and vehicles are clearly visible. And yet, in his testimony before the Parliamentary Standing Committee, Secretary Jaishankar explained that due to the line of sight on good days and bad days, he could not confirm the level of Chinese activity or the number of troops deployed, but admitted that it is possible that there are Chinese troops in northern Doklam. Then, Foreign Secretary Vijay Gokhale's statements were even more puzzling. He said that it is not for the government of India to tell the Chinese side that you construct infrastructure elsewhere along the border. This despite the fact that Doklam is disputed territory, illegally occupied by China. The Indian government's stance on Doklam must urgently be clarified. Unless it does so, ambiguities along the border will allow China to continue to seize territory, change the status quo in crucial areas, and threaten India's vital national interests at will. So, what must India do? While the issue of Doklam can no longer be resolved by coercive means, India needs to plan to ensure that there is no repeat of this incident or an incident like Galwan along its border with China. This is the right time to do so, as more countries across the world express their discomfort with Chinese belligerence in disputed regions. In order to defend its national interest, India must step up its power projection capabilities both in an economic and military sense, because China isn't going to become any more accommodating anytime soon. India needs to signal to China that it has clear red lines along the border, and a Chinese escalation in one area will be met with escalation in another area where the status quo favors India. Unless India does this, it risks a repeat of incidents such as Galwan, which involved a similar pattern of Chinese aggression in disputed territory, followed by a unilateral de-escalation from the Indian side. India should build up credibility in the neighborhood, build counter-coalitions against China, and augment its economic and military resources while simultaneously continuing a dialogue and discussion so that India's population continues to have access to cheap Chinese manufacturing and India's startups have access to Chinese capital. If you like this video, check out our analysis of China's activities in the South China Sea here. You might also want to check out our research document, the Doklam imbroglio, for a detailed analysis of the dispute, a timeline of the 2017 crisis, and more imagery analysis of Chinese activity in Doklam.